Good evening, good afternoon. My name is Juliet Ouma. I am the Programs Assistant at African Pharmaceutical Network, and it's a pleasure to have each and every one of you join us for this industry discussion forum this afternoon with Sakile Dube Mwezi, the coordinator of SADC MRH, where she'll be taking us through a step-by-step guide to navigating the ZAZIBONA registration pathway. So to allow our colleagues a few minutes to join us, I can see we are already at 4:07. Just give them 3 more minutes and then we'll be able to kick off the session EAT. So just 3 more minutes, then we'll be able to start. In the meantime, please introduce yourself on the chat. Let us know who you are as from your LinkedIn account page so that we can also be able to connect with you. Thank you. All right, we're at 4:10, and I would like for us to kick off the session this afternoon. To those who have just joined us in the last 3 minutes, my name is Juliet Ouma. I am the Programs Assistant at African Pharmaceutical Network, and it's a pleasure to have you join us for this industry discussion this afternoon. So thank you so much for making time to be with us, and I'm looking forward to having an interactive session with you. Feel free to introduce yourself on the chat. Let us know who you are and where you are joining us from. Right, so before we get started, I have a few housekeeping rules. I'd like to bring to note that this session is recorded for future references, and as you may have noticed, microphones and video noises. You may use the chat feature, the network comment and while we are getting to the Q&A section, you may also post your questions and have Sakile address those questions towards the end of the session, where we'll have engaging with the colleagues in the call. You are encouraged to engage respectfully, and if you are having any technical challenges, please note that we are here to support you. You may send a message on the chat and we'll be able to attend to you. If you'd like to contact us and share any feedback with us during this time or any other time, please take advantage of the Secretariat email that is before you, that is secretariat@africanpharmanetwork.net, to share your feedback, queries with us, and we will be able to assist you. With that, I would quickly like to take us through the overview of African Pharmaceutical Network, who we are as an organization, the reason for our being, and the kind of work that we do. So African Pharmaceutical Network is a Pan-African network that brings together pharmaceutical professionals, stakeholders, and organizations for the purpose of knowledge sharing, policy shaping, and innovation nurturing partnerships, leading towards reliable access to quality, safe, and effective health products and technologies in Africa. APN as an organization was established in 2020 at the backdrop of COVID-19 for very specific reasons. When we look at the continent as it is and addressing the various challenges that we are experiencing in the pharmaceutical industry, we were established because of the following reasons. We had limited local manufacturing in Africa attributed to capacity shortfalls in the continent. For us, we are very keen on empowering the pharmaceutical workforce in Africa, ensuring that all the individuals working within the sector, they are capable, they are well skilled, they have the resources that they require to be able to thrive in this environment. It is usually a pain for us as well when we are training professionals are going to train outside the continent, but they would really not come back to work within the continent. So for us, it is our best interest that we empower the pharmaceutical workforce that is in Africa so that we are able to meet the needs of the patients who are in Africa. And also one of those needs as well is limited local manufacturing. When we look at Africa as a continent, we rely on imports up on a scale of 70 to 80%. So for us, we have to make sure that these scales really go down and that we are able to manufacture from the API to the finished product and bring quality medicines, quality medical devices to the patients within the continent. The other challenge that we are experiencing is segregated and disjointed pharmaceutical systems strengthening interventions across sectors and domains within the industry. We have different sectors that are working in silos, and this ought not to be, because we are all working towards a common goal. So for us, it is to come together and ensure that all the sectors are collaborating and that we are finding solutions for the challenges that are within the industry. And there was a lack of a single common platform to convince stakeholders to chart a path for the future of the industry. When we are looking at the industry as it is, we usually see that we're working in different cadres, that they are working within their cadres, interacting maybe with a few of the other collaborators and stakeholders within the industry. But one thing is certain and one thing is clear. We have to come together and have a common platform where we can have all the stakeholders who are involved coming together, working collaboratively. And we are working towards a common goal. It becomes so difficult to achieve that goal in a given limited time. Therefore, one of you to take advantage of the African Pharmaceutical Network as a single common platform upon the continent to work together with us. And if you're in this that is beyond the borders of Africa, we still welcome you to collaborate and interact with us. So what is our reliable access to safe, quality, and effective medicines and health products for the African population within the continent? And this is done strategic investment in the pharmaceutical workforce development, business ecosystem support services, and policy shaping interventions. As we move on, I will be able to show you can take advantage of the collaborations that we have and the interventions that we have to work together with us. And our vision is ensuring reliable access in Africa. So these are our values, and at the core of it is humanity. If it's to you, you will definitely not do any harm to them. You will bring products that are quality. You will bring products that are safe. You will bring products in good time so that you their lives and better their lives as well. Then with that, we have integrity, professionalism, client value creation, and teamwork. So this has been our just 20 to the date where we are today. Have been able to establish partnerships along the lines, sharing the courses that we have in the academy that you may take advantage of. Pharmaceutical workforce development, regulatory support services, business ecosystem support, policy shaping, and partnerships. And the advisory board is made up of 3 individuals, that is John Morlo, Kirtin. So this is the management team on a day-to-day basis, the operations of the organization under the able hands of Dr. Odhiambo David. So you may feel free to interact with the individuals that are before your screen. This is me, Juliet Oma, the program's assistant team. Thank you. You may become a member of the African Pharmaceutical Network. We have different categories: the individual membership, where we cater for the needs of the students who are still studying and the professionals for working. We also have institutional membership, where we have categories for the African institutional members and internationals. So these are our courses. Currently, we have the enrollments of cohort 3 ongoing. We welcome you to engage with us for regulatory affairs training, upskill with us as well in pharmaceutical supply chain management or pharmacovigilance and patient safety. These are our partners over the course of time, and we welcome you to us. We are still collaborating with stakeholders in the industry. So how can you therefore engage with us? You may become a member of the African Pharmaceutical Network, expressions of interest for these particular projects, or you may learn of the African Pharmaceutical Network. And with that, I have come to the end of my presentation, and I would like for us to move forward. So if you have any questions, please feel free to post them on the chat. I will be able to address them. But moving forward, and in the interest of time, I would love to introduce Sakile Dube Mwezi. She's the speaker for the day. She'll be guiding us on a step-by-step guide to navigating the ZAZIBONA registration pathway. I'm not so sure if you've heard about it, but if you've heard about it, I am also sure that you're in this call so that you may be able to gain more insights to this pathway, how you may also use it to your benefit. If you're a manufacturer, you're a distributor, and you're bringing your product and you're introducing it to the southern part of Africa, how then can you utilize this registration pathway to the advantage of your organization, to advantage of the South African people, and also to ensure that you keep on building that which is established upon the continent when it comes to ensuring access to safe, quality, and effective medicines, even in the South. So with that, I would love to introduce Sakile, and who is Sakile Dube Mwezi. She's the coordinator SADC MRH program. She's a pharmacist by profession and a regulatory scientist at heart. Sakile has been involved with the program since 2010. Her responsibilities are to support the host agency, the Medicines Control Authority of Zimbabwe, that is MSS, and the SADC medical overall coordination of the product implementation, including ZAZIBONA activities across all SADC member states. Is an extensively experienced pharmaceutical expert and regulator with more than 25 years working within the pharmaceutical sector, including committed to the roles encompassing pharmaceutical regulation, consultancy, project management, and leading teams to the current GMP. And she's the former head of the inspectorate at the Medicine Control Authority of Zimbabwe, MCAS. And she's our host and our speaker for the session this afternoon. Please let me know if you'll be sharing your screen or you'd like support with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Juliet. You were breaking up so much. I hope it's not an indication that my network is the issue. Could I just hear from the audience whether that was just a challenge and whether you can hear me? Just a thumbs up will do. You can hear me clearly?
Fantastic. Yes, okay. We can hear you clearly, and I'm getting a good reaction from the audience as well.
No problem. Thank you for the introduction. As she said, my name is Sakile. I hope you can actually see my screen right now.
Yes, you can see.
Okay. Let me just put it in
place it on
presentation
slideshow.
mode. Yeah.
Fantastic.
No, that's fine. If I could just ask that I could turn my camera off because I'm just worried about the bandwidth. And then when we're doing the question and answer, I'll turn it back on again. Thank you. Okay, so I've got a quotation there by someone called Marcel Proust. Please don't ask me who he is. I forgot to check that. But I actually liked what it said. It says, you know, discovery consists of not in seeking new lands, but in seeing things with new eyes. And why I'm actually sharing that with you today is because I'm not going to say something that's so profound and very new, but I do want you to take this journey with me for the next 40 or so, 20, 30 minutes to actually just look at things from a slightly different, you know, use new eyes to actually understand this process. So sometimes we've heard the same things over and over again, but there's always a benefit in actually seeing something with a new eye. Also, because we have changed quite a number of things. So if you can take this journey with me, it will be beneficial, I'm sure. What am I going to talk about this afternoon? That is the outline, just basically going to cover for you, you know, I'm sure that there's some people who may not know fully what ZAZIBONA is. And then I'll give you just, you know, one or two slides that gives you a little bit of our history and then dwell extensively on the process itself, because I think that is what people are interested in today. And then I threw in some practicalities as well to say, so what, I have this information. What does it actually mean for me as a prospective applicant? Or maybe in our audience, we also have some regulators as well. So on the right, I have a snippet from our website, and you can find us on www.zazibona.com. We will probably in this coming week do a massive update, especially in light of the new information and where we're actually at now. But most of what is on the website right now is actually still relevant. But essentially, ZAZIBONA is close to maybe 13 years, so 10 plus years that it has existed. And the name ZAZIBONA itself actually is coming from a Zambian language, Zambia being one of our member states, which actually means look to the future. And if you look at it even in a South African language, it also means having foresight or looking ahead. And that is where that name ZAZIBONA actually came from. And then at the same time, it's also a derivative of the 4 founding countries that actually set up ZAZIBONA. So ZA being Zambia, Z being Zimbabwe, WO being Botswana, and NA being Namibia. And what we essentially are is a regional initiative that seeks to harmonize how one can get marketing authorization and basic regulation within the SADC region. And ZAZIBONA itself is anchored in joint assessments and joint inspections for the products that would then be registered in the member states. So if one wants to then have a broad overview, I would basically say that this is like your one-stop shop. And some of the things that we've experienced, say, for a one-stop shop is if you're going to a border post and you want to cross over from one country to the next, once upon a time, there were a lot of tedious processes. Maybe you go to counter 1 to proceed to counter 2, etc., and each of them having different functions. One will deal with the individual, another one will deal with a vehicle, and not only just the vehicle, but different aspects of the vehicle if it is to cross over to the other side. And then sometimes you would then have issues to do with either VAT, tax, or whatever the case might be, or customs. So when a country says that we now have a one-stop shop for our border post, it means that you stop at one counter and everything that you need to be sorted out before you actually cross over into the neighboring country is actually taken care of. So in a nutshell, that is what ZAZIBONA seeks to do, to bring all the different regulations that exist in the different member states under one roof with as much synchrony as possible, so that when you are looking at marketing authorization as an applicant, you only have to do that work once. I'm moving on to a little bit of our history. So if one wants to define the modality of how we do our harmonization, we essentially look at ourselves as a work sharing initiative. So we share the work amongst 9 member states. So initially I said that there were 4 original countries that brought together ZAZIBONA, but now you actually have 9 active member states that actually contribute to the work. I'll come back to that when we look at the second slide. How it originally was working is that each of the member states would look at the applications that they have received, and then they would ask each other, you know, I have got hydrochlorothiazide. Oh, okay, I've also got the hydrochlorothiazide. Is it from the same manufacturer? Yes, it is. So maybe we can actually share the work. And the reason for sharing the work was because there were a lot of challenges within the NRAs, one of them being significantly about capacity. So some didn't have the numbers, whilst others, though they had the numbers, the expertise was not so robust. But if you put the countries together, it then means that you now have a formidable force. You have now an entity that can effectively regulate. But then what was important was a reason to actually share the work. And so what would then be a critical factor was that at least 2 member states had to have the same application. Otherwise, you can't talk about sharing if only one person has that application. So a list would then be put together, and that list would actually indicate how many products are there in common. And of those products that are in common, they would then actually be assessed jointly. And how this would actually take place is that they would then share. If there are 10 products that are in common, one country would take on 2, and another country would take another 2, and so forth. And then when they eventually come together to the plenary session that is discussing these products, even if I came to the table with 2 applications, by the time that I leave a joint assessment as a ZAZIBONA session, I will actually have 10 applications that have been evaluated, because whilst I only did 2, my neighbor did another 2, and the other neighbor did another 2. So this is what we call the work sharing and how it actually benefits the NRAs. But at the same time, it was not only just looking at the interests of the NRAs, it was also looking at the interests of the applicants. As an applicant, you find that maybe if there is no harmonization, you will be asked to bring a pink elephant to one regulator. Once you've brought that pink elephant, and then you want to register the same product in the country next door, they say to you, oh, no, we don't do pink elephants here. We want our elephants to be black. And so the black elephant is then what you have to produce for the next country, and so on. And so by the time you're done with all the colors of the rainbow, you know, it can be quite a lot of work. And we also know that if your regulatory desk is top heavy, it also means that the products themselves are beginning to cost our populations that much more. Then as it went along remember we said that we've been in existence for 10 plus years. We then discovered some challenges along the way. We started to have tracking issues because the products were still within the individual countries. So once a ZAZIBONA session is over, we would then expect each country to track the ones that they have. But then sometimes it wouldn't work as well as we had designed and wanted it to. Then another challenge was the fact that in order for the applications to be considered, an applicant has to lodge in at least two member states at the same time. So sometimes what would happen is that an applicant would come through and say, yes, I'm interested in the ZAZIBONA process. Here is my application. So let's, for argument's sake, say that they went to Namibia. And then Namibia says, okay, that's fine. Where else are you lodging the application? And they say, oh, I'm also going to lodge it in South Africa. Okay, that's fine. They accept the application in Namibia. They put it through the ZAZIBONA workstream, believing that the applicant is also going to apply in South Africa. Then after assessment, and when we're doing the final recommendation, we're now like, but where is the second country? And then you discover that the applicant did not then actually lodge the application in the other country. And so this was causing a headache because people were now doing work that really had nothing to do with them. We also then had a disproportionality in terms of the workload because we had what I would refer to as some popular markets. So by virtue of their size, you might find that a country like South Africa would attract a lot of applicants because there's that much more of a bigger population and therefore more money to be made. Whereas if you have then a small country within SADC, it may not be as popular. And how we would actually apportion the work is that if you have the application, you would need to be involved in the primary review. So in the end, we had the same countries overworking because some countries were not so popular. And then, of course, we also then had issues to do with funding where we needed support for these joint assessment sessions, etc. So when you put all these challenges together, we then decided that, look, having this procedure housed in the different countries, coming together only for the joint assessments is not a very good idea. And that's when last year we decided to pilot a centralization. I'll take you back now to what we mean by the 9 active member states. So when we say that we are active member states, we're saying that these are the countries. SADC has 16 countries in total, but it's not every single country that is able to actually do registration of products. So the flags that you're seeing to the right actually show you which member states actually take applications, assess them, and can give you a marketing authorization certificate. Also, we have Mauritius, we have Madagascar, and we also have Comoros that also do that. And most recently, Angola as well. But because they don't have as big a capacity as the other member states, it is their choice whether they are called active or non-active or an observer. So right now, we only have 9 active member states that would actually implement a ZAZIBONA recommendation for you. So those namely are the flags there, that is Botswana, there's DRC, Malawi, Mozambique, Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa, and who did I leave out? I think that just about does it. So now let's move on to the real thing that everybody's interested in hearing about today. So when we centralized this process, which I already mentioned, we started piloting last year, and we piloted this with about 60 applications. We then said that you no longer have to go to the individual countries to lodge your application. So the most important thing to understand about the current centralized ZAZIBONA process is that there is now a centralized online portal which receives applications, and that portal represents all the member states. So it represents the 9 active member states you would have gone to submit your application. And at the same time, what we then did was, I mentioned that one of our challenges was that we were having some countries being overworked because of how we were actually allocating our work. So now we have actually recruited all our experts into a pool. So it doesn't matter whether you're from Zimbabwe, Zambia, or wherever, because now the applications belong to everyone equally. You are within a pool of expertise, and then depending on your expertise, we will allocate an application for you. You will then assess that, and then it goes through a second review from someone else within the central pool of expertise. And who runs our portal? We have an administrator, and this person is actually responsible for central communication and the allocation of work, workflow, and primarily the tracking. Because remember, again, I said that one of our biggest challenges was the issue of tracking. And then our other challenge was with the finances. And so we then came back to industry and said, this service, which we have been offering for 10 or so years as a free service, really cannot continue to be, because we need it to be sustainable. One day, the people that are funding us We've had tremendous support from entities like the Gates Foundation, from WHO, from Swissmedic, from the German agency, from the World Bank at some point as well. So we've had a lot of money coming through to support this initiative. But we also know that this cannot go on forever. And so the conversation around sustainability started about a year or 2 years ago. And so when we introduced the fees, it's not just that we needed to have some money lying around somewhere, but it's really about sustainability and making sure that this alternative pathway, which by the way is a voluntary pathway, so you don't necessarily have to use ZAZIBONA. It's up to you. You make the choice. And right at the end, I'm going to talk about some of the guiding principles that will help you to decide whether this pathway is for you or not. So the initial fees that were introduced were half of what you're seeing on the screen right now. The current fees after the piloting are now $5,000 for a parent molecule, and then $3,000 if there is a line extension. So the scope of our products, we only deal mainly with generic products. So the fees that you're seeing there apply to generic applications, a parent molecule, and then the line extension comes in slightly cheaper because a lot of the work overlaps because there's a lot of commonalities if it is a true line extension. How do we receive this money? We ask you to split it between the screening, and then you pay once you've successfully applied. Once we've successfully screened your product, we will then ask you to pay for the balance. So why it was designed like this is because we really do not have the capacity to be giving you refunds. And so we do not want to take $5,000, screen your product, and then we say that your product has failed. And we also would not want to say, look, that's your problem, that it failed, and we're going to take and pocket the $5,000. So part of it is being fair to both sides, but also reducing the amount of effort and energy when it comes to the admin side. So you pay a screening fee. In the piloting, that was only $250. But this time we're actually asking for a greater portion of this being $600. And the main reason is that if you don't screen a product well enough, it's going to give you challenges. And some of the challenges that we saw within the pilot is that we ended up having to go into additional review cycles because we had not taken the trouble to screen our products as they came through. And then another thing to note is that GMP determination was always on a cost recovery right from the beginning, and that is still going to continue. It will not change. So GMP has its own separate fees, and I'm going to project those fees now. So they're a little bit complex, but basically the base fee would be $8,000 for a facility that does oral solid dosage forms. And the algorithm is based on the amount of time and energy that would be required to inspect that facility. So that is a function of the number of days that the facility is actually being inspected. And it is also a function of the complexity of the product. So you'll find that when you're looking at a single dosage form and it's an OSD, that is where the base fee of $8,000 is. But once you then have a combination of an OSD and another line, which would be an oral liquid, that would be an additional day, plus there's additional scope, and so on and so on. And so this is applied, and it can be a combination. So if you would want just the just the OSD, it would only be the 8,000. And then if you had an OSD and an LVP, that would then be a combination of 8 plus the 10,000. And this works similarly, that we have inspectors that would be selected from a pool of experts, and they would then be sent to do the inspections on our behalf. So in essence, that is where we are coming from, and that gives you a little bit of background to where the fees actually were, how they came about. We did engage with industry extensively when we started off with the introduction of the fees. And then, unfortunately, when we then had to do move on from the piloting to the implementation. We do accept that there wasn't as much engagement. However, it really is something that had been necessitated by the fact that we need to be able to fully recover our costs. Now I'm going to move on to just giving you the highlights of how this actual assessment workflow works. So in this new process, we have actually asked industry to do what we call pre-submissions. So when we floated an expression of interest that is valid for 18 months until the end of December next year, we asked applicants to say, what is it that you believe you will be submitting or wanting to be approved in the next 18 months? The reason why we moved towards this pre-submission is because initially we had an overwhelming response and everybody came in, and we had said we wanted to pilot using about 30 products. The 30 was not a thumbsucked figure. It was actually a derivative of what we were receiving over the 10 years. On average, every year we were receiving between 40 and 50 applications. So because we still had some applications that we were concluding, 30 was deemed to be a satisfactory number to be able to test. But when we then opened this centralized procedure, we were actually pleasantly surprised that it gained a lot of popularity and a lot of people wanted to be within that pilot. So within a fortnight, we had already reached the 30 products and we then had to close. And so what that did was that where we normally would receive 30 products throughout the course of a calendar year, we now had 30 products that all had exactly the same timeline. And by the way, when we say 30 products, we're talking about the parent molecules. So eventually with the line extensions, we had 60 applications that we were actually dealing with. And so one of our learnings from the pilot was that it definitely does not make sense to have a bottleneck where everything comes in at once and everything has exactly the same timeline. We just don't have that capacity. So the pre-submissions have assisted us to be able to plan jointly with industry to say, if you are planning to submit or your application in December of next year, you don't have to rush in now. Just tell us so that we can actually put together a timetable that would allow both sides to utilize their capacity and for you to have the right quality of application coming in. Because again, when people rushed in to meet the pilot deadline, we did get a lot of applications that were not up to the standard that we would have appreciated. And then after that, we then look at what you have indicated you want to submit, and we say to ourselves, is this within or is it not within the scope of ZAZIBONA? So once we have the scope decision done, only then do we ask you for the dossier screening fee, which in this case now is the $600. So you pay your fee and you upload your dossier at the same time. And then we then screen your product. And if it fails screening, we would give you the opportunity to pay again the $600 and resubmit. And then your product would be rescreened. If there's successful screening, we then are happy now to proceed with full evaluation of the product. And that is the point where we ask for the balance. So it depends whether this is a line extension or it's the parent molecule. And after you have paid your full assessment fee and submitted to us the proof of payment, it is then that we would actually now start with the application. And so what we then call Q1 begins. And this is where we allocate the dossier. So your application is actually assessed by two individual and separate people. So the first assessor looks through, comes up with their primary report, and then this is then handed over to a second assessor who goes through it and also has access to your product application, your dossier, and validates and verifies the things that have actually been brought up as a list of queries, and also to verify that nothing has actually been left out. After this, we then would convene a joint assessment session. And in that joint assessment session, we again have experts that now come to the table representing their member states. So we will have 2 people from each of the active member states who sit now in the plenary to again hear the presentation of this product that has been assessed, first of all, by the first and the second assessor. And then the joint plenary then says, I think that you were too harsh when you actually said that query in our country, that's not such a big issue. Or do you realize that when you reviewed this, you actually did not look into this particular aspect in terms of the bioequivalent study? So we need you to add this query. So the decision is not made by an individual, neither is it made by an individual country, but it's actually made by all the member states coming together to say, this is the consolidated list of queries, and it can now be sent. So after that first plenary session, the first letter then goes out. So at that stage, you as an applicant has not had any input. And then begins Q2, which is the second stage. You receive your the letter, you go through it and you respond, and then you send that response to us. And once we receive the response, again, it's allocated to a first and a second reviewer. And once they've looked at it again, the cycle again goes through a plenary session where we have representatives from the member states coming through to discuss the application. And then another letter is then sent if there are still outstanding queries. And then once you then send your response to us, that is when we go to the final stage, which is the third stage. And here we now look at your second response. Again, it has been looked at by the first and second reviewer. The plenary comes together, which is made up of, again, another group of people. And then we come up with a recommendation. So the final output or the outcome of the ZAZIBONA process is not a marketing authorization, but it is a very strong recommendation to the member states to actually go through with registration. And so when you get a letter with that whether it's an approval or a rejection, then the countries themselves are committed to that. And to show their commitment, the heads of agencies also came together and had a joint assessment, a joint statement released that says that if you come and apply now for registration with a letter of recommendation from ZAZIBONA, you will be able to get approval within 90 days. So you have a positive recommendation from ZAZIBONA. So the value, having spent your 5,000 US dollars, is that you can now go to any of those active member states, submit your application, and within 90 days, you then have your marketing authorization. I'm again sharing with you the same 3 cycles, but have added there a bit of the timelines in terms of what we give you. So when you get your initial query letter, you're allowed 60 days to respond, and then we review it again. And when you now get your second query letter, because it's not supposed to be new, information that is being requested. Most of the time it's follow-up actions. We then require you to respond within 30 days. And then within the 30 days, if, for example, you need to generate some fresh information, and a good example of that would be supposing that maybe there's a comparative dissolution study that would aid the decision. We realize that that cannot be done within necessarily a 30-day period. So that can be extended to 60 days. Or if something requires you to generate data, you can then say 30 days or 60 days is not adequate. Please, may I have 90 days for argument's sake, but you then need to justify it. And then we go through to the final stage, as I had actually said before. We have on occasion had exceptional Q4 stage, but this is not at the present moment an entitlement. So the first time that we review, we give you a chance to respond. The second time, again, we review and you have a second chance to put in your representations. And then the final time is we must make a decision. Otherwise, we cannot meet that commitment where we say that we can give you a recommendation within 12 months, including your time. So what this does, I had to borrow a slide that I used when I did a presentation with Africa CDC because I couldn't quite move it over. It just shows you those timelines, screening. I think they've moved a little bit downwards. So confirmation of the scope, we take 5 days. Screening is 14 days. And then once you have paid, we take about 90 days in which we then do our initial review. And if you've noticed, our joint assessment sessions are done quarterly. And this is because it is accommodating those time periods in which to actually do the work. We expect applicants, if you have been put into a submission window, to be able to pay and send through your payment within maybe, say, a very short period. But worst case scenario, we then give you 60 days, but we're not keen for you to push to that 60 days. But in that process, we would already have been telling you that we need to kick your product out. And then it's just highlighting there at the end that you do have the 90 days when you go to the country level. In terms of the product scope, this being a regional initiative would require that the products are essential medicines that affect all of our member states equally. We do understand when applicants say that, but look, I want to market my products in all the member states, and I would want to be able to get a common verdict. But unfortunately, for over-the-counter products, for example, or something that is not of a public health interest, we cannot clog this pathway with anything and everything. So it has to be essential medicines that are part of what WHO would refer to as essential medicines. And you can find the list of diseases and conditions which we consider to be essential on our website. We do not look at pre-qualified products. This is because every single member state already knows how to deal with the WHO pre-qualified product. There's a 90-day timeline within the member states. So there's no point in us taking through a product that has already been pre-qualified and going through all these motions. And it effectively is a waste of resources. We initially were not looking at products that require us to use reliance, i.e. those products that were from what previously were called the stringent regulatory authorities. So now they're referred to as the WHO listed authorities, WLA. However, because of industry requesting this, we then said, fine, we are prepared to do an abridged review, but bear in mind that we are not going to change the frequency of our meetings. So we still will do them quarterly. So it means that you might not get your approval within a 90-day period. We had one application in the pilot that we tested, and that came through with a timeline of 6 months, and mainly because there was one small thing that was a query. And the minute there's a query, it means that already we would overshoot a 90-day timeline. But as an applicant, you can decide that it's fine with the benefit of having potential approval in all the 9 active member states. You would rather forego that waiting period and bring through that product. The key thing to note there is that for you to use Reliance, you must have access to the full assessment and inspection reports from the NRA that you're relying on. So that SRA, now called WLA, must be able to give you or furnish us with those full assessment reports. Otherwise, we cannot be able, because we need something to rely on. It cannot just be the registration certificate. And what we're basically doing there is to just make sure that the product that you applied for in that stringent market is exactly what you will be giving to us as well. We did a few biologicals in the pilot, but we have now decided that we cannot, and at this point, continue to bring in biologicals within the scope. So in the current EOI that expires or ends in 18 months, we are not taking any biologicals. So there, the recommendation is that please use the Continental, which is the one that is being done under Armour, which is being done under Auda Nepad. They're the same thing at the moment. So please use the Continental process for the time being for biologicals and biosimilars. We are also looking as regional and continental initiatives towards a way that products can be referred from one level to the other. I just want to take a little bit of time coming close to the end of the presentation to talk about these managed submissions. So for the first one, the 18-month EOI, the expression of interest, we have provided for 4 quarterly submission entry points. And what we're saying basically is we do not want all the products coming in at once. So you have windows in which you are able to submit your application. In each window, we are taking a maximum of 10 products, and these are the parent products. If, for example, there's 3, 4, 5 line extensions, yes, we will still take those. And we may end up like in the first window, which we have just finalized and already are having applicants upload, we have 19 products, though our target was only 10. But because of the line extensions, we are willing to accommodate that so that we have as many people benefiting from the pathway as possible. This figure will then be reviewed after 18 months, and it will mainly depend on capacity. If we have more people, and then maybe I might mention at this point in time that if you look at these applications that we've considered jointly, and then you look at what happens at a member state level, a small to medium size member state within SADC would have about 200 applications within a year. And then the ones that are big, like Tanzania, would actually have almost 8,000 applications. So what I say this so that we can have an understanding that the products going through ZAZIBONA in most instances are only accounting to about 10 to 15% of the workload, barely 20%. And then for some like TMDA, which is a big agency, it would only even be less than 1%. So a country has to balance between what they have at national level with what is happening at a regional level. So in the long run, if this is to gain traction and people have a strong preference for this regional initiative, as we engage and we get more feedback from you, we may then actually look towards saying certain applications must then be compulsory through the regional initiative. But we're not there yet. But what we're saying is that with the current capacity and with the volume of work that this pathway assists the NRAs, only a maximum of 10 applications per submission window is what we can basically handle. And when we did that, we had an overwhelming response. So we had about 171 applications that came through, and we couldn't do all of them. We completed the in and out of scope on the 2nd of July. We've already communicated to those that wanted the first window. And interestingly enough, the proof of concept actually did work out well for us, because in the first window, there were not so many people that wanted the first window. And this is because they wanted time to actually put their applications and the quality of their dossiers in order. So the least difficult to deal with was that first submission window. With the others, we have quite a lot that have come through. And so we have what we are calling a floating number of applications, because after doing the in and out of scope, we're probably still sitting on about 140, etc. And if you do the math and we're only taking about 10 to maybe say 20 with the line extensions, there are still some applications that will not be able to fall into this 18-month period. So what we intend to do with the floating ones is that if somebody has been given a slot in this first window, for example, and they don't utilize that slot, we already have applications that will be bumped up from being floating to now. So you would get an email to say, we have an opening. Are you interested in having your product come through? And if you say yes and you pay, we will actually then take on that product. So to summarize, we basically floated an expression of interest valid for 18 months. We opened it up on the 20th of May and closed it on the 15th of June. And this is where we then got those 171 applications that I talked about. Those were the pre-submissions. And then having screened them, we then have put all the applications into 4 to 6 submission windows until the end of the expression of interest. So those people will be contacted whenever each time the submission window is about to open. They will be given a timeline in which to pay and submit their dossiers. And those at the bottom there, those are the prospective timelines. So we have an opening of the window in September. We will again have in November where the uploads will be done. And then in February, and then finally in May of 2026. And that should take us through to next year when the AOI actually will then end. The applications were dealt with on a first come, first served basis so that there would be fairness and transparency. And then these applications that have gone through into the first window, our aim is to be able to table those at the first assessment session after this, which would be 15th to the 19th of September. And then the one that will follow after is another session in November. So we will still continue to have quarterly sessions. We're not increasing the number of sessions, but the aim is to be able to give you a recommendation within 12 months, including the time that you spend responding. So to conclude, basically, it's very, very important to understand that ZAZIBONA is not for everyone. This is a regional initiative. And so you need to also have a regional or a multi-country strategy, a business strategy. If your product is only intended to be marketed in only one of our member states, please go and submit individually to the member state where you are marketing. Or if you're a local manufacturer and your products are only for that market, it does not make sense for you to then come to a regional initiative where there are all these timelines, etc. You just need to use the national process. I hope that is clear. It is also a very stringent process. When I went through it, I indicated that every stage goes through a first and a second review, even with the screening. And then when we finally have now the evaluation, you would have first, second review, plus the plenary that sits and still deliberates on this. So this utilizes top-level reviewers across all the countries. And these, mind you, are also some of the same people that are called up by WHO pre-qualification. So only a complete and high-quality submission succeeds at ZAZIBONA. And this is not to say that the member states are careless when they're doing the work on their own, or that there is loopholes when it comes to the national regulatory pathway. No. What it means is that when we come together, we have limited flexibility because these recommendations that are at a region, there are also conversations about EAC, IGAD, the other recs also respecting our recommendations. So we cannot deviate. We have to stick to the letter of the law and make sure that everything is done according to the procedure. And so that nobody also can say, but this procedure was not actually followed. However, a national regulatory authority can decide that, look, this particular product is very, very important, and therefore maybe they can waive how it's labeled, or they can say to you, we'll give you time to change something that is small. And I think I've given this example previously. There was a product that was a pediatric preparation, and then it required palatability studies because of the taste. It was meant to be granules that were then meant to be dissolved. And then because it then was turned, it becomes a suspension, palatability was an issue. And then ZAZIBONA said, without the palatability study, we cannot recommend approval. However, the individual member states then said, but I don't have this product in my market. I would rather have this product with its, without the knowledge of its palatability than to deprive the children in my country of this good quality product. So this is what we mean by the flexibility, that a regulator can then say, no, it's fine. I don't mind, I can forego the palatability at this stage. Because given the public health risk or the public health interest, I am willing to forego that. But at ZAZIBONA, we cannot do that. So regional systems really need to maintain their consistency to safeguard you and ourselves. So in essence, what I'm saying here is that you need to understand that a product coming through ZAZIBONA, first of all, must have intention of being marketed in at least 2, if not 9 of the active member states. It's a very stringent process. Please don't bring to us substandard or below quality applications, or where you're still building up the dossier, because you will not make it in the time frame that we require you to actually go through the process. And there's limited flexibility. So my concluding slide basically just says to you that it's not necessary for someone to go always to a path that exists. Do not go where the path may lead, but instead, as ZAZIBONA, we are endeavoring to say that even if there is no path, we will leave a trail behind. We are embarking on this. We're fully committed to it, and we do want it to work for you as applicants. And this is why we continue to have stakeholder engagements. And we also have sessions like these so that we are able to let as many people know about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sakile, for taking us through this session. Indeed, we are learning, and I would welcome the audience to just appreciate you if you found this session valuable. The content that has been shared has been valuable to you. You've liked and appreciated that which has been shared today. I'm welcoming you to appreciate Sakile. And I have some questions for you here. I have equally been learning on my end well, but I want to take my focus to the audience first and have some questions for you here. And I want to start with Kinywa Moredi. And he has 3 questions. And the first one says, some NRAs view the application fees as a source of revenue instead of a cost of recovery. Hence, they view regional assessments as a threat. How do you handle this? That's his first question.
And I propose that maybe you give me about 3 at a time, and then so that we don't go back and forth, so that we make sure we finish on time. So maybe you can read the 2 others.
All right. All right. The second and the third question says, do the applicants have to pay other fees before getting marketing authorization? And lastly, another issue is on egos and superiority complex by NRAs with bigger markets or who have attained the ML3 and 4 certifications. How do you handle such issues as well?
I think I need clarity on that one. So it's saying there's egos, but what do we mean by that? Maybe the person who posted it could please just clarify.
All right. I'm also trying to understand it. He's saying the other issue is with regards to the ego and superiority complex by NRAs with bigger markets or those who have attained ML3 certification. I'm trying to think if it is with regards to collaboration, but I'm welcoming Kinywa. You can raise your hand and I'll be able to unmute you. Then you can elaborate on the last question. Yeah. Sakile, maybe you may answer the first 2.
Yes, so let me go ahead and
while
answer
I
the
get
first
him
2.
to elaborate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So the first question about the regional initiative being a threat to income, that is very, very valid. And there's no 2 ways about it. A lot of the agencies now are autonomous or semi-autonomous, so they don't get anything from the government to be able to survive. So they need to pay salaries. They need to be able to, regulate basically. And remember that there are a number of regulatory functions that, and not all of them are a source of income. And we are realizing that for ourselves as well, that whilst marketing authorization and GMP inspections can allow you to have cost recovery, things like your surveillance of the market, etc., there's no one who's going to pay you for that. However, maybe some have instruments, maybe with the lab and all the rest of it through the licensing fees, etc. So the way that we are now thinking around this is in part to do with what I mentioned earlier about, one, pooling it to say how much of this critical mass needs to be at a regional level and how much needs to remain at an NRA level. So that's one conversation. Two, we then need to say to ourselves, and by the way, I forgot to disclose, so this money that we collect from you, it's not to buy me a new car, trust me, it's not. It's actually meant to pay the assessors that are in the pool. So we give them a bit of an incentive. It's not a lot of money, but the bulk of the money then takes us through to be able to hold the joint assessment sessions. And if you do the maths, we said 2 of the active member states being flown from wherever to a particular member state country. And at the same time, we also then would want to include our non-active members as well, because they make procurement decisions. So they might not necessarily issue you with a marketing authorization, but they need to be assured that the product that is coming to their market is of the right quality. So if we bring together those 25 to 30 odd people to sit around a table quarterly, it costs us about 50 to 60,000 US dollars. We did manage during COVID to have online sessions, but the honest truth is that it's not as robust and it's a headache. I think all of us realize that face-to-face is important, because you can have people on a screen right now, and then somebody calls you. It's not that you don't want to participate, but you have to go off, and then whilst we're looking at you, we're thinking Juliet is there, but Juliet is not. So the second bit would be that we are saying to the NRAs, in addition to compensating the individual assessors, we also need to compensate the NRA itself. Remember that as a region, we don't employ anyone, but we are benefiting from the staff that comes from the NRA. So we use their staff, but we're not paying them as a regional initiative. But again, it's a club. So we are considering how the club can work in such a way that it benefits everyone. So thank you for bringing that up. And we are considering it and trying to make sure that these fees do not actually become a threat to either, because the ecosystem needs to work. National, regional, and continental. Otherwise, if we mess up with the ecosystem, then things will not go well. Then there was a question about additional fees. My apologies, I was not thorough in my presentation. I should have actually mentioned that. Our fees do not want to interfere with that threat that the first question actually talked about. So we are voluntary. You can choose to use this pathway. And this is why, even though you don't consider 5,000 to be a low or minimum, but it is, given the fact that you're entering something like 9 markets simultaneously, it is a nominal fee. And because we want to keep it at a nominal fee, we then don't want to interfere or mess with the member states. So yes, when you go to them, you still need to pay their statutory fees. Some are actually considering giving you some discounts. I can't mention a member state that is looking at that, but they're one of our smaller ones. And so to attract you, they will actually maybe give you a discount. Some, I know, for example, actually look at it as an expedited pathway. So we don't want to interfere in that. They are sovereign states, they are sovereign NRAs. I think I'll stop there and we allow more questions.
Thank you.
And there's a hand.
Yeah, and there is a hand, and I want to allow Tao to speak to us, and then I'll get the question from Tina. Yeah, go ahead, Tao.
Yeah, thank you. So the question is, so the pathway, does it also cover medical devices, or is it purely pharmaceutical and all the rest?
That's a simple one. No, we do not do medical devices. We do have a technical working group that is actually starting to look into that. At a continental level, they do have, but our initiative doesn't do that. There's a question from Jessica Achieng. I think I need to correct how you understood the thing. So in the past, we used to say at least 2 member states. But when we centralized, there's now no minimum. You don't qualify through minimum. So how you qualify is that when an expression of interest is floated, you respond to the expression of interest with your pre-submission plan. So when you send us your form, we will look at what you have decided you want to submit. We decide on the in and out of scope. And then it now boils down to the first come, first served. So those ones that sent in their pre-submissions forms first will then be the ones that would get into the initiative. So please understand me. You do not need to have at least 2 member states. This is now centralized. We represent all the member states at the portal. What we do, however, ask is that please have a marketing plan in place. There's no point in us going through this for 12 months and then we never see the products coming to the member states for registration. It just means that we've used resources that are then not benefiting, because marketing authorization is only granted by the NRA and not by ZAZIBONA. I hope it's clear for you, Jess. More questions, please, Juliet.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You have also answered Tina as well on the first question. She was also inquiring with regards to medical devices and the in vitro diagnostics. All right. Then we have Mulugu, and he's saying, can we expect inclusion of biologicals or biosimilars products in the scope within the coming year? Because the products are costly, and with ZAZIBONA, we can serve more patients in these countries with high quality, affordable products quickly.
Yes, so this is something that we're seized with. We actually had a training session about 2 weeks ago to increase our capacity to be able to assess these biologicals. I'll be honest with you that our biggest challenge with these biologicals is that there are also new kids on the block. So a lot of people are coming up with these generics, in inverted commas, biosimilar, but there's not enough knowledge out there on these products, the originators themselves, before we can even now push towards saying that these are copies of those. So that is where the biggest challenge has been. However, we are increasing the capacity, we are training people, and we're praying that we don't lose them after we've done the training. But we also do have, if the continent comes together, the expertise is there. So please look out for how we can deal with this at a continental level. But for now, in the next 18 months, we will not include the biologicals unless if maybe we come up with some trump card. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I have Emily here who also had the same question with regards to the biosimilar products, biological products. But to her second question, she says, additionally, is ZAZIBONA actively considering or aware of country-specific requirements for biosimilar development, evaluation, and authorization across the SADC region, particularly in light of the global variability in regulatory guidelines that has historically hindered timely market access?
If we can take 2 at a time so that we can actually, I think we're supposed to stop at past, right?
Yes. Oh my goodness. The questions are coming in so fast. So many. I've just lost Emily's question. I'm trying to find it.
Okay, while you're looking,
Okay.
so there was the issue of the country-specific requirements. what we tried to do was that in the lead up to the time where we started accepting fees, we pushed the member states to actually put on their website and to come up with ways in which they can deal with the country-specific requirements. And so where there's a challenge is normally with the labeling. And for example, I think South Africa, the main challenge was also to do with clinical studies in terms of how they, like slight differences with what a reference product should be and what is the innovator when you come into that market. So this is receiving attention. At this stage, what we did is to say, please declare it upfront so that your applicants are aware, so that at the time when you're starting your application, you know what to compile when you are now going to the country level. The aim or the dream or the goal is to make sure that one day we are able, all of us, to synchronize fully. The problem is though with the legislation, but I think also what's important is to lobby as industry at a national level to say laws need to change. And it's not that the regulators don't want to, but sometimes legislation in countries, medicines are not always a priority for what goes to parliament. Over.
Very true. Thank you so much, Sakile. I have Nicola, Giovanna, and Elizabeth. And the questions are: is ZAZIBONA pathway applicable if you wish to register in selected countries other than the 9 participating countries? And are GMP inspections done for each product, or perhaps a decision to inspect facilities is risk-based?
Okay, so the answer to the first one is that you would need, so I think the way I'm understanding is that if you have a product that you want to take to North Africa, and North Africa is not part of our REC, would ZAZIBONA do an assessment and then can you take that recommendation? So as I mentioned earlier, the inter-REC reliance is still a mechanism that is being worked on. For us to accept an application, we really do hope that you are intending to apply to our region. We have not made it compulsory, but we are looking into that to say that, look, show a commitment. And by the way, one critical thing is that the recommendation is valid for a year. The validity for 1 year was based on the fact that we don't expect too many post-approval changes within a year. So it makes sense for us to say that this product will remain the same for 1 year. We also do want you to quickly get on with the marketing authorization. So if you don't utilize your recommendations within 1 year, we would then question the next time that you want to come in. Then the second question, sorry, just remind me again, I didn't jot it down.
She was saying, are GMP inspections done for
yes,
each
about
product?
the GMP inspections. So we don't actually make them product specific. They are more, so if you saw the fee structure, it's about the dosage form and the lines. Over.
Fantastic.
I can see a question as well from someone called Tasara,
Yes,
who
yes.
was asking about what are the strategies for the ecosystem. So essentially, we're saying that the national, the regional, and the continental level must form an ecosystem. The national regulatory authorities currently are the ones that are employing people and are seconding people to region and the continental. And then what Continental did before they started is to make sure that there's as little overlap in terms of the scope of products. So you find that at a continental level, you're really looking at sophisticated molecules, which is why we're saying take your biologicals to the continental level. But then they also put in a proviso about local production. And so a lot of products that were coming through were about local production. But essentially as well, just like we will not evaluate paracetamol at a regional level, it's because we believe every country has got the capacity to do paracetamol for themselves. So there is already an ecosystem, and it's about complexity of products. And then at the same time, we have not made any of these compulsory. So you're still free to go anywhere within the ecosystem, but please take the guidance in terms of the complexity. Over.
All right. So I have two last questions for you. So first, I have Christine here. She's saying just a small clarification on the ZAZIBONA application. I know previously MCAS was the point of contact, but from your presentation, it seems it's semi-independent. Kindly clarify on that. And does that mean a manufacturer can submit the dossier directly, or they still require an LTR?
Okay, what is an LTR, Christine? Can you just...
That is a local technical representative.
Okay, right. So so with the centralization, we have a portal and we have our administrator. So you are applying in inverted commas directly to us through your 5,000 US dollars. So the portal, everything is housed on the MCAZ server, but it is not administered by MCAZ. So again, to make sure that it's clear, you don't need to be valid in any of the member states. You can come directly to us. However, once you have the recommendation, the different countries have legal requirements. So for in South Africa, you do need that LTR when you are now going to make your submission. But in the first instance, to get the recommendation, all you do is to bring in your pre-submission, we take your money, we assess, we give you that recommendation, and there is no need to deal with any of the NRAs as an individual. I hope it's clear.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So the final question is, what are some of the ways industry stakeholders can support the ZAZIBONA process to ensure its success?
So I think the important thing, and this is why we have also tried to introduce the quality circle meetings. First, we did them for GMP, and now we're intending to have one as well for the assessment side. If industry improves the quality of their assessments, so will we also get a good result at the end of the day. So one thing that is important is, please, can we invest in capacity building for industry as well, to make sure that we then have good quality applications coming through. Then the second thing would be about understanding the process and being able to utilize it the way that it should be. And then the third would be to fully appreciate that for this kind of value, there has to be a cost. And so when you pay willingly, it means that we are able to do this. And then, of course, the engagement, when we have the stakeholder, we do have a listening ear. We may not be Father Christmas, we cannot grant everything, but I think even Santa Claus has also got his limitations as well. So when we have the stakeholder, please, now I remember the most important thing, please extend if we need to, Juliet. Please, can industry start operating and thinking as a unit and not as individuals? You are in competition with each other, but as APN, for example, it's easier for us to deal with APN than to deal with manufacturer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, for example, when we want to come back and say, is $5,000 a reasonable fee to pay? We don't want to get 10 different individual answers. Yes, no, maybe, pink elephant, blue. You're throwing the elephant colors back at us. However, if everyone, you go in, have a fight amongst yourselves and come back with a unified force, that is how industry can then help us. If APN, which represents 1,000 people, says, no, this is not working, or please change this aspect, or please reduce the fees, we are then forced to listen. But if there's voices coming from 10 different corners, it becomes difficult to make credible decisions. So I think that's one of the key things. And I do appreciate APN and especially this opportunity for allowing me to present.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sakile. We really appreciate the insights, the contributions, the guidance that you've given us this afternoon. We are going to take each and every word that you've said into keen consideration so that we can continue to improve access to quality and safe, effective medicines across the continent. And I would like to welcome Dr. David Odhiambo. He's the curator of African Pharmaceutical Network. He's in the call with us so that he can share a few things with us, even while he shares a parting shot. But also, in the meantime, please engage with us on Menti. That is menti.com. Would love to get your feedback, get to understand if you've gotten something from the session today and how you would rate it as well. We'll be having another part 2 coming up. That is next week on August 5th, where we are bringing together the NRAs from SADC, that is from MCAS, from Botswana, from SAPRA. They will be coming together and we'll be having a panel discussion. So if you have any questions that are yet to be answered, they will be answered on this particular day. Don't despair. We'll be having a second session coming up. So please feel free to share your feedback with me right now on menti.com. I am presenting my screen and the code is as is presented on the screen. David, if you can hear me, karibu sana.
Thank you so much, Juliet. I hope you can hear me well, loud and clear.
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sakile, for the insights shared, the conversation that you've shared. And the one thing that I've actually just want to share from the last statement that you made is that there is an opportunity for us to bring the industry together, work together to have a common voice, but also look at ourselves as collaborators with governments in delivering the quality healthcare products in the ecosystem. Because if we don't work together, don't have a common voice, then ultimately that is going to impact our ability to deliver on whatever our mission is as organization, but also as individual companies. And this is the opportunity that we have. And our mission and our focus as African Pharmaceutical Network is to look at how do we bring together different stakeholders, but also work with the industry to bring that perspective. And we are honored that you accepted our invitation, you shared your insights, and most importantly, facilitated the engagement where now on August 5th, we have the representatives of the respective NRAs coming in to share with the industry what are the key challenges, what are the opportunities, but also how can we work together to further this conversation. And I think that is a good starting point for us for the work that we are doing. And we are honored to have you here with us and to have learned from you. Thank you for your support. For all of us who are in this call today, I would say thank you for honoring that opportunity to engage with us. But most importantly, this is an opportunity where you can also bring those perspectives and those concerns. And with Juliet sharing her screen here, you can see the content, the information that we're sharing. It is about us being able to curate conversations, but also facilitate engagement with other stakeholders that are moving us forward. So what I would urge of you and encourage of you is, please share your feedback with us. On the chat, I also shared our email address and our LinkedIn social media engagement channels. Please do engage and give us your perspectives on what we can do together. But most importantly, let's look at this as an opportunity to collaborate, to work together as industry, with regulators, with different stakeholders, to deliver value for our people and for the continent. That is all I can say for now. And thank you, everyone. So let's continue with the feedback session. Then we come to the end of the session. And thank you, Sakile, once again.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone. Please feel free if you need any specific information to reach out through APN, and I will do my best. And as I posted on the chat, the slides will be made available, and I will also incorporate some of the information that I had left out but was pertinent as well from the questions that came up. Thank you.
Thank you, Sakile. Much appreciated. Thank you, David, as well. To our audience, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'll just request for 4 minutes from you so that I can gather feedback from you with regards to the session today. I'll be sharing the link for the next session that is coming up on August 5th so that you may be able to attend and participate in it as well. So you will not miss out on anything. All right. Can see 3
Sorry,
individuals.
Juliet. I see that there's a comment from someone called Laura. So she was asking if the unanswered questions will be answered offline. So what we normally do is if you can just compile and we can do a, jointly, you and I can do a Q&A. So anything that was not answered, we'll be happy to then address it for you because of the limited time.
That's all right. I can do that. And Sakile, if you would be joining us as well next week on the panel discussion, we'll still have you there and we'll be glad to keep hearing insights from you as well. But I will do that for you as well, that I'm going
No
to share
problem.
the
Oh, yes, it's
questions.
my team coming, by the way. Yes.
Yeah.
No, so I will join. Yes, I will do.
Exactly.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to the next question.
And guys, I would really encourage you just go to menti.com on your phone, on your laptop, wherever you are, and just key in the code 58361111 and give us your feedback, so then we can see what areas of improvement we need to put in place, but also what we can do differently. For those who are sharing email addresses for the materials and everything, I believe all of us registered and we have that information. So we will use the email that we had. Don't worry about getting access to the materials. We'll be able to share those with you. As you do that, go to menti.com, use the code 58361111. Let's get your feedback. Two more minutes so that we close in the next 2 minutes. That instead of the poll, the Menti poll, Juliet. Able to access the Menti, even you can use the chat to tell us probably any topics. Just Juliet, maybe you can move through the questions that people can type in their feedback on the chat, then we'll consolidate it from there as well.
All right. Just stopped sharing my screen for a bit.
Oh, okay. Share your screen and project it so that people can see.
Right, so please go ahead and give us your responses on the chat with regards to the questions that will be appearing on your screen. I can see that most of us are unable to go to the next question. But on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest, how would you rate today's session?
They can't see the next slide on Menti. Can you move to the next one?
Okay, I am also unable to present.
What was your rating above, Penny? Probably what I would say is because of the technicalities that we're having. Juliet, maybe we can consolidate the questions and we'll share them as a survey poll to when we send the certificates and the follow-up message. Then I think we need to address this particular technicality that we're having here.
Yeah.
That's okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, David, for the assistance. Much appreciated. Thank you. Please let us know which other topics you'd like for us to cover in our future engagements. I had seen one that was shared earlier, we'll be sure to share that with Sakile and see how then we can be able to continue the conversation that we've started today with regards to the topic that you have shared.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, everyone. Have a good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Let's engage in the next webinar on 5th of August next week. That would be the follow-up, which will be covering perspectives and experiences from the different national regulatory authorities. And please come in with the questions that you have as well. Thank you and have a good one.
Thank you very much and good evening. Thank you, Sakile, as well.
Thank you.
Much
Take care,
appreciated.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.